What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the best tank tier list in Throne and Liberty. So this game has a lot of builds and weapon combinations to choose from, but the big question is, what is the best tank build for your playstyle and the current meta? I've spent a bunch of hours of testing and here are the results. So then moving over to the first S tier build, which is the sword and shield with the greatsword. This setup will provide you with one of the strongest buffs in the game. As a tank, you will be redirecting 70% of your teammates' damage taken to yourself, while at the same time significantly increasing your party's damage. And on top of all of this, you will be doing insane amount of damage, as by using specific skills and passives, you will lower our cooldowns dramatically. This build leverages the strengths of both of the weapons for a ton of extra health and heavy attack chance. The sword and shield with the greatsword has some of the best AoV farming potential in the game, because of passives like the Spectrum of Agony and active skills that can work off each other, such as the Frost Cleaving and Ice Tornado. Overall, this build has insanely high HP with amazing AoV and high burst damage. However, at the same time, your cooldowns will be a bit longer and you will mainly rely on heavy attacks. Most players like this setup because both of these weapons have passives that complement each other perfectly, which makes you a very effective tank. So, if you want to be a melee monster both as a tank and DPS, then this is the build for you. Next we have the wand with the sword and shield, and we will place it right in the S tier. I like to call this build as the paladin setup, because it is very unique, in the sense that we are going to be a tank that can heal at the same time. Players usually prefer to just go healer or tank separately, but the question is, what happens when you combine all roles together? Well, you get this monster that can tank and heal at the same time, while still doing big AoV damage. I personally haven't ever died once in this build, so if you're ready to not even notice the enemy hits and heal more than other healers, then this is the build for you. However, with all of these bonuses, of course will come some downsides. One being the lack of endgame damage if you compare it against other melee bruisers. But what it lacks in damage, it more than makes up for it in durability and utility. Thanks to skills like the counter barrier, swift healing and blessed barrier, you are going to withstand a massive number of hits, and your build will reflect this goal throughout its playstyle. Also, when you get access to the Tevin's Grasp of Withering, this build will become even stronger in all the content. But as it is an arch-boss weapon, so I don't expect the average player to have the same experience. This setup's performance will directly scale with gear level, and the difference between a gear tank and a non-gear tank will be huge, so keep this in mind. On top of this, you will need to focus on durability, strength and dexterity for your gear, with the focus on traits that increase health, evasion, damage, buff duration and skill resistance. But all in all, if you want to be a self-sustained tank that can also help to heal and stay alive as long as possible, then this is the build for you. Next we have sword and shield with dagger, and we will place it right in the A tier. This setup is an agile evasion tank with amazing AoV damage. We will be incredibly tanky thanks to skills like the counter barrier, while also being able to dish out big damage with the cleaving moonlight and the thunderclouds bombing. Overall, this build has high CC, really good mobility, high AoV DPS and most importantly with low cooldowns. Your primary focus will be on evasion, health and damage reduction to survive, although this build will still output decent amount of damage, thanks to skills like the cleaving moonlight, thunderclouds bombing and the piercing strike. On top of this, with the access to skills like the counter barrier, stalwart bastion and the shield survival technique, you will be incredibly tanky in any fight. This build is very gear reliant and has quite low range, but on the other hand you get very high mobility, really good CC, amazing AoV DPS and most importantly, low cooldowns and amazing survivability. So if you want to be an evasion tank that can hold enemies aggro but also do huge amount of DPS, then this is the build for you. Next we have the sword and shield with the crossbow, and we will place it right in the B tier. Recently this build's been getting attention across all regions by having strong AoV control and mobility. This setup of course is very off meta, and more testing is needed to confirm its effectiveness in all forms of combat, although it's quickly proving to be a strong option, particularly in PvP. Most players like to build around strong AoV stuns, with skills such as the witty strike, Annihilation Slash, and a shot at victory. In the crossbow and sword build, your role transitions to that of a dungeon tank, while maintaining versatility for open world activities such as grinding events and contracts, or even open world dungeons. While you won't be getting as high resistance as other tank setups, it more than makes up for it by delivering amazing sustained DPS. This will enable you to faster progress in the open world, especially if you're playing solo. In PvE, the sword and crossbow deal some of the highest damage that a tank can do, while farming or killing elites and solo bosses. This is mainly because of the crossbow's burst skills. However, this build has a high skill ceiling, and if you master it correctly, then it is extremely hard to kill in small arena and PvP content. You're pretty much very similar to a wand and a sword with shield player, but with a less party-wide utility and fewer buffs. Skills like the selfless diffusion, nimble leap and detection make you extremely hard to kill, and if you want to use this build, then there are two options. Normally, you would want to build around melee evasion and ranged evasion. However, you can also use the melee evasion and ranged endurance, as other players like to focus on extremely high crit chance setups. Next up we have the sword and shield with the staff, and he deserves to be placed right in the C tier. This setup makes use of the staffs and sword skills to create a high damage melee and magic build. It's effective against groups of enemies, allowing for faster farming and leveling. As far as stats go, you will need to prioritize improving the strength first and then wisdom. Strength will provide you with durability needed to take groups of enemies, while wisdom will keep you up with the build's high demand for mana. The staff and sword combination is perfect for new players that want an alternative from the sword and greatsword, while still remaining a good choice for tanking in dungeons or other PvE content. This build has the potential to also deal good damage and play at range, as it can bring a lot of damage potential even outside of dungeons, allowing you to clear open world mobs and contracts much easier, even though it's considered to be an off-meta choice by most players. Your main playstyle will revolve around using the high focus, as it should be used always first before casting other skills, because it will give you bonus damage and the cooldown speed buffs. So as you can tell, we will use the staff skills mainly to do damage, and then the sword skills for the buffs and defensive options. If you want to try out this fun and off-meta build, which is still strong and good choice for almost every single content, then here you go. And then for the last and final build, we have the sword and shield with the longbow, and we will place it right in the C tier. This setup is very unique, because it provides flexibility in choosing engagements. These weapons will give you the ability to deal damage from any distance, but it also allows for flexibility in engagements, as certain encounters can require the player to reposition. Also, should the situation call for it, this build can also be adjusted for utility thanks to the Stalwart Bastion, and cleanse via the Purifying Touch, as this is the least popular build, so you will have limited skills for tanks, low survivability and low damage. However, in return, you will get great party-wide buffs and will be able to fight any enemy at any range. If this trade-off is worth for you, that's only a question you can answer. However, this is a quite good build choice for large-scale PvP, which is perfect for newer players that want to get involved large-scale PvP, as it is very easy to play and generally cannot harm the Zerg by being played badly. Your role will be helpful to the Zerg by providing defensive buffs, and by pulling the enemy players that are out of positions into the reach of your team, while still remaining relatively protected. Overall, this build provides much needed AoE CC through skills such as the Arrow Vortex, and can even deal decent damage with the Flash Arrow and many more. If you want to use an off-meta build and somehow make it work, then here you go. So, if you enjoyed this video, click like, subscribe and comment. If you are interested in more content, then check out my channel and I will see you in the next one. So take it easy, peace.